I drove up the winding mountain road to my beloved Aspen retreat, the place where Frank and I spent 30 summers together. Exhaustion weighed on me like stones. Months of insomnia and grief had worn me down to nothing, and I desperately needed peace. I unlocked the door with my key. Lights blazed inside. The furniture had been rearranged. Before I could process what I was seeing, Amber appeared from the kitchen, her face twisted in fury, screaming that I was trespassing. Behind her stood Brandon, Linda, and Gary, all staring at me like I was a stranger breaking into their home. I stood frozen in my own doorway, my suitcase still gripping my hand. The weight of it suddenly felt unbearable, but I couldn't move, couldn't process what was happening. "Get out, you old intruder." Amber's voice was shrill, piercing. "I'll call the police." My son Brandon stood there behind her, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the hardwood floor Frank had refinished himself 12 years ago. He wouldn't look at me. Linda, Amber's mother, had her arms crossed over her chest, her mouth pressed into a thin line of righteousness. Gary, her father, examined his shoes like they were the most fascinating things in the world. Something hot flared in my chest. Anger, yes, but more than that. A kind of clarity I hadn't felt in months. I was 67 years old, a widow of 3 years, a retired English teacher who had spent her whole life following rules and being polite. But this was my home. The home Frank and I had built together, paid for together, dreamed in together. "Go ahead," I said, my voice steady and calm in a way that surprised even me. "Call them if you dare." I walked past Amber, close enough to smell her expensive perfume, and sat down on the leather couch Frank had bought at an estate sale 20 years ago. The springs creaked in the familiar way. I set my suitcase beside me and folded my hands in my lap. Waited. Amber's face went red, then purple. Her fingers fumbled with her phone. She actually dialed. I heard the emergency dispatcher's voice, tinny and professional through the speaker. "Yes. I need police at 4200 Spruce Mountain Road. There's an intruder in my home who refuses to leave." While we waited, the silence pressed down on all of us. I looked around the great room. The wall of windows facing the mountains Frank and I had watched the sun set behind countless times. The stone fireplace where we'd roasted marshmallows with Brandon when he was small. The deck visible through those windows, the one Frank had built with his own hands, board by board, one summer when Brandon was in college. "Brandon," I said quietly, "look at me." He flinched. Still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Someone want to explain what's happening here?" I kept my voice level, conversational. "This is my house. My name is on the deed. There's no mortgage. It's paid off and has been for 10 years. So why are you acting like I'm the one who doesn't belong?" Amber's smirk cut across her face like a knife. "This house belongs to us now. Brandon and I legally own it." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "That's impossible. I never sold it. I never transferred it. It's in my name alone." Linda stepped forward then, and I saw where Amber got her particular brand of self-righteousness. "Not anymore," Linda said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You signed it over 6 months ago, Joanne. Don't you remember?" The world tilted slightly. 6 months ago, I'd been in France with my best friend Helen, walking through lavender fields and trying to remember what joy felt like. I hadn't been anywhere near a lawyer's office or a title company. "I never signed anything," I said. "Mom." Brandon finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "You shouldn't be here." The betrayal in those 4 words hit me harder than anything else. This was my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. And he was standing there, telling me I didn't belong in my own home. Vehicle lights swept across the windows. A Pitkin County Sheriff's vehicle pulled into the driveway. Deputy Tom Crawford stepped out. I knew Tom. He'd been patrolling these mountains for 15 years. We'd chatted at the local market, at community events. He knew this was my house. Tom came through the door, his hand resting casually on his belt, his eyes taking in the scene. "Evening, folks. Got a call about a trespassing situation?" "Tom," I started. But Amber cut me off. "Thank goodness you're here, officer. This woman broke into our home. We've asked her to leave, and she refuses." Tom looked at me, confusion clear on his weathered face. "Miss Joanne? What's going on?" "This is my house, Tom. I own it. I came up for the weekend, and I found them here. I have no idea what they're talking about." Amber moved fast. She had papers ready, sitting on the side table like she'd been expecting this. "Officer, here's the quitclaim deed. You can see it's been properly filed with the county. Joanne transferred ownership to my husband Brandon and me 6 months ago. It's all legal." Tom took the papers, his brow furrowing as he read. I stood up, moved to his side, looked at the documents. There it was. My name. My signature. Or something that looked remarkably like my signature. The document was dated March 15th. Notarized. Filed with Pitkin County on March 20th. "I never signed this," I said, my voice shaking now. "Tom, I was in Europe in March. France. I have my passport in the car. I can show you the stamps." Tom's discomfort was obvious. He shifted his weight, looked from me to the papers to Amber and back again. "Miss Joanne, this signature here looks pretty official. Got a notary stamp and everything. You're saying you didn't sign this?" "I'm telling you, I've never seen this document before in my life." "Mom," Brandon said, and his voice had taken on a different tone. Gentle. Patient. The tone you use with children or confused elderly people. "You've been so scattered lately. Don't you remember? We talked about this. You said the house was too much for you to maintain. You wanted us to have it." I stared at my son, and it was like looking at a stranger. "I never said that. Brandon, what are you doing?" Amber produced her phone, scrolling quickly. "Officer, I have text messages. See? Here's Joanne discussing the transfer with Brandon. She was very clear about it." Tom looked at the phone. I couldn't see the screen, but I watched his face shift, become more uncertain. These texts show conversations about transferring the property. I never sent those texts. "I don't know what she's showing you, but I didn't write them." "Ma'am," Tom said, and I heard the shift in his voice. "The professional distance. This is looking like a civil matter. The deed appears to be legal and properly filed. If you're disputing the transfer, you'll need to take it up with a lawyer, maybe get a court order. But right now, according to these documents, this property belongs to your son and daughter-in-law. I can't remove them." My legs felt weak. I sat back down on the couch, hard. But Amber wasn't done. She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who'd already won. "Officer, there's more. We've been renting this house from Brandon for the past 4 months. We have rental agreements, proof of payment. We've established residency here." She produced more papers. Tom scanned them. Rental agreements showing monthly payments from Amber to Brandon as landlord. Bank statements showing transfers. All dated, all official looking. "And officer," Amber continued, her voice taking on a concerned, worried tone, "I'm afraid Joanne has been having some cognitive issues lately. We've been very worried about her. She's been confused, forgetful. We didn't want to say anything because it's so painful. But she's been struggling." "That's a lie," I said, but my voice sounded thin even to my own ears. Brandon stepped forward. He looked miserable, but he spoke anyway. "Mom, we've noticed it for months. You've repeated yourself, forgotten conversations. Last month, you couldn't remember how to get to our house in Denver. We've been so worried about you." Tom looked at me with something like pity now. "Miss Joanne, I think it's best if you head on home tonight. Get yourself a lawyer. Sort this out in court. I can't force anyone out of their legal residence without a court order." "I'm not leaving," I said. Amber's eyes glittered. She picked up her phone again. "Then I'm calling the police back. I want her removed for trespassing, and I want it documented that she's having a mental health crisis." Tom held up his hand. "Now, let's everybody calm down. Miss Joanne, please. For tonight, just go home. Come back with a lawyer. This doesn't have to get ugly." I looked around the room. At the house I loved, at my son who wouldn't meet my eyes, At Amber, triumphant. At Linda and Gary, silent spectators to my humiliation. I stood up slowly, picked up my suitcase. "This isn't over," I said. Amber smiled. "Yes, it is." I walked out of my own house into the cold mountain air, got in my car, started the long drive back down the mountain to Denver. My hands were shaking so hard I had to pull over twice. 6 months ago, I'd been in France, trying to heal from losing Frank. I'd been nowhere near a notary or a lawyer. Someone had forged my signature, someone had stolen my house, and my own son was helping them do it. By the time I got back to my Denver home, it was past midnight. I sat in my driveway, my head resting on the steering wheel, and tried to understand how my life had just been stolen from me. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Amber's triumphant face, heard Brandon's voice telling me I shouldn't be there. In my own house. At 8 o'clock, I called Dylan Spencer, an attorney Helen had recommended years ago when Frank and I were updating our estate plans. Dylan agreed to see me immediately. His office was in a renovated building in Capitol Hill, all exposed brick and modern furniture that somehow managed to look both professional and warm. Dylan was 42, sharp-eyed, with graying hair at his temples, and a reputation for taking on tough cases. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and studied me. "You're absolutely certain you didn't sign this deed?" "I was in France in March. I have passport stamps, credit card receipts, photos. I never signed anything. We'll need all of that documentation. I also want to visit the county recorder's office, get copies of everything that's been filed. And we need to talk to this notary." By noon, we were at the Pitkin County Administration Building. The clerk pulled up the records. There it was. Quitclaim deed, filed March 20th, transferring ownership of 4200 Spruce Mountain Road from Joanne Patricia Winters to Brandon Michael Winters and Amber Lynn Winters. I studied the signature. It looked like mine, remarkably like mine. The J had the same loop, the W had the same distinctive tail, but it wasn't mine. I knew it wasn't mine because I'd been standing in front of the Eiffel Tower on March 15th, eating a crepe and crying because Frank would never see Paris with me. "This is a very good forgery," Dylan said quietly. "Professional quality." The notary information listed Mountain Title Company in Glenwood Springs. Dylan called ahead, and we drove there that afternoon. The notary's name was Susan Feldman, a tired-looking woman in her 50s who'd been notarizing documents for 23 years. "Yes, I remember this one," Susan said, checking her journal. Woman came in with valid identification. Driver's license with her photo matched her face. I verified the signature, watched her sign. Everything was proper. "Do you remember what she looked like?" I asked. Susan squinted at me, then at her journal. "It was 6 months ago. I notarize maybe 30, 40 documents a day. I remember she had blonde hair, glasses, around your age, maybe a little younger. She seemed nervous, but people often are when signing over property." "It wasn't me," I said. "I was in France." Susan's face went pale. I checked the ID. It looked legitimate. "I'm very careful about that. Do you have security footage from that day?" Susan shook her head. "We only keep it for 90 days. After that, it records over itself." "I'm sorry." Dead end. The forgery was so good, so carefully planned, that even a professional notary had been fooled. We drove back to Denver in silence. My phone buzzed constantly. Text messages from Brandon. "Mom, please stop this. You need help. Amber and I are worried about you. You're not well. Let us take care of you. Why are you doing this to us?" I wanted to throw the phone out the window. That evening, Dylan called. "I've been going through the property records more carefully. Joanne, there's something else. Something worse." My stomach dropped. "What?" "6 months ago, you also supposedly signed a durable power of attorney. It gives Brandon authority over all your financial and legal decisions." I couldn't breathe. "I never signed that either." It's notarized by the same Susan Feldman, same date as the deed. This means that legally, Brandon could have signed the quitclaim deed on your behalf. The power of attorney gives him that authority. But I never gave him power of attorney. I believe you. But proving it is going to be difficult. The documents look legitimate. They're properly filed. And now your son and daughter-in-law are claiming you're mentally incompetent. I'm not incompetent. I know. But they're building a case. We need to move fast. I'm going to file paperwork to revoke the power of attorney. But Joanne, they're going to fight it. They'll claim you're not mentally capable of making that decision. On what grounds? Dylan was quiet for a moment. I did some digging. They've already prepared evidence, medical records, witness statements. They've been planning this for months. The room spun. I sat down hard on my kitchen chair, gripping the edge of the table. What medical records? I haven't seen any doctors except my regular physician, Dr. Warner. The records are from a Dr. Raymond Foster, psychiatrist in Denver. According to these notes, you've been seeing him for 6 months. The notes describe significant cognitive decline, memory loss, confusion, difficulty managing finances. I've never heard of Dr. Foster. I've never been to a psychiatrist. That's what I thought you'd say. We need to visit him. Tomorrow. I didn't sleep that night either. Someone had impersonated me at a notary's office. Someone had created false medical records in my name. Someone had stolen my house and was trying to have me declared incompetent. And my son was helping them do it. The next morning, Dylan and I sat in Dr. Raymond Foster's waiting room. It was a pleasant space, soft lighting and comfortable chairs, magazines about mindfulness and wellness, completely normal. Except nothing about this was normal. Dr. Foster was a kind-looking man in his 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle voice. He invited us into his office, clearly confused about why we were there. Dr. Foster, Dylan began. You have a patient named Joanne Winters? I can't discuss my patients without their consent. I'm Joanne Winters, I said. And I've never been here before in my life. Dr. Foster blinked, looked from me to Dylan and back. I don't understand. You have records indicating I've been your patient for 6 months. Notes about cognitive decline. I'm here to tell you that I've never met you, never been to this office, and never had any of the sessions you documented. Dr. Foster's face shifted from confusion to concern. He turned to his computer, typed rapidly. Miss Winters, according to my records, you've had 5 appointments with me, starting in March and continuing through August. We've discussed your memory issues, your difficulty with daily tasks, your family's concerns about your well-being. I've never been here, I repeated. Dr. Foster pulled up his calendar, his intake forms, his session notes. Everything was there. Detailed notes about a woman named Joanne Winters, age 67, widow, presenting with increasing forgetfulness and confusion. Did you see this person in your office, face to face? Dylan asked. Dr. Foster scrolled through his notes. Most of the sessions were virtual. Due to COVID protocols that were still in place early this year, many of my patients preferred telehealth appointments. I conducted the sessions over a secure video platform. Do you have recordings of those sessions? With patient consent, yes. Dr. Foster looked at me. May I access those recordings? Please. Dr. Foster pulled up the video files. Clicked play on the first one. A woman appeared on the screen. Blonde hair, glasses, approximately my age. She sat in what looked like a home office, bookshelves behind her. It wasn't me, but I could see how someone might think it was. The woman had similar features, similar build. She wore her hair the same way I did. The glasses were the same style. In the grainy quality of a video call, the resemblance was close enough. That's not me, I said, my voice shaking. Dr. Foster went pale. He clicked through to another session. Same woman. In one session, Brandon appeared in a small window on the screen. A family session. Dylan leaned forward. Dr. Foster, did you ever see Miss Winters in person? Physically in your office? The intake was virtual. All subsequent sessions were virtual. Given the pandemic protocols, this wasn't unusual. Many of my older patients preferred not to come into the office. Someone impersonated me, I said. They used my insurance information, my name, my identity. They created a false medical history. Dr. Foster looked sick. He scrolled through his files more carefully. The insurance claims were processed. The ID verification was done through the video platform. The woman presented her driver's license to the camera. It looked legitimate. Did you save images of the ID? No. Once I verified it visually, I didn't need to keep copies. Another dead end. Except this time, we had video evidence that someone had been impersonating me. Someone who looked enough like me to fool a psychiatrist over video chat. Dr. Foster, Dylan said carefully. You said Brandon participated in some sessions? Yes. 2 family sessions. He expressed concern about his mother's declining cognitive function. He was very worried, very attentive. Brandon knew. My son knew that woman wasn't me, and he participated anyway. He lied to a doctor, helped create false medical records. He wasn't just weak or manipulated. He was actively complicit in the fraud. We left Dr. Foster's office with a written statement from him, acknowledging that he'd been deceived. It was something, but it wasn't enough. That afternoon, I drove to Brandon's townhouse in Cherry Creek. He and Amber had kept it, apparently, even while they were living in my mountain house. I rang the doorbell. Waited. The Ring camera activated. Brandon's face appeared on the small screen. Mom, you need to stop. Let me in. We need to talk. I can't. Amber says we shouldn't engage with you when you're like this. Like what? Trying to understand why my son is stealing from me? We're not stealing. You gave us the house. You just don't remember. Brandon, I saw the videos from Dr. Foster's office. That wasn't me. You know it wasn't me. You were in the sessions. You know that woman was someone else. Silence. Then Brandon's face crumbled. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Amber said it was the only way to protect you from yourself. Protect me? You're robbing me. You don't understand. We needed help. We're drowning in debt. Amber's parents lost everything. I got laid off 8 months ago. We're about to lose our house. The mountain place was just sitting there, and you only used it twice a year. We needed it more than you did. The honesty was almost worse than the lies. He wasn't denying it. He was justifying it. So you forged my signature, created fake medical records, tried to have me declared incompetent. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Amber said if we just presented the paperwork, you'd let it go. You'd understand that we needed it. I would have helped you if you'd asked. I would have loaned you money. I would have done anything for you. But you didn't ask. You stole. Amber appeared behind Brandon, her face hard. She grabbed him, pulled him back from the camera. Stop talking to her. She's trying to manipulate you. Amber, let me speak to my son. He's my husband. And you're harassing us. If you don't leave, I'm getting a restraining order. The door didn't open. The camera went dark. I stood there on their front step, in the cold October wind, and understood that I'd lost my son long before I'd lost my house. That evening, Dylan called with more bad news. I've been looking into Brandon and Amber's finances. Public records, court filings. They're in serious trouble. Credit card debt over $80,000. Defaulted on their car loan. Their townhouse is in pre-foreclosure. Amber's parents filed for bankruptcy last year. So this was about money. It's always about money. Your mountain house is worth approximately $1.2 million. That would solve all their problems. They're planning to sell it. Almost certainly. Once they establish clear ownership, once you're out of the picture, they'll list it and split the proceeds. Your son gets half. Amber and her parents get half. I thought about Frank building that deck. About the summers we'd spent there. About the life we'd created in that house. And I thought about it being sold off, divided up, turned into cash to pay off someone else's debts. What do? We fight. We prove the forgery. We prove the medical records are false. We get your property back. But Joanne, I need to warn you, they're not going to make this easy. And they have one more card to play. What card? They're going to try to have you declared legally incompetent. If they succeed, Brandon keeps the power of attorney permanently. He becomes your legal guardian. He'll control everything. Your house, your money, your medical decisions. Everything. When? The hearing is scheduled for next week. The competency hearing loomed over everything. Dylan insisted I see my own doctor, get my own evaluation. Dr. Patricia Warner had been my physician for 15 years. She'd seen me through Frank's illness and death. She knew me. Dr. Warner's office was familiar, comfortable. She ran me through a battery of cognitive tests. Memory recall, problem solving, spatial reasoning, clock drawing, word association. I passed everything easily. Joanne, Dr. Warner said when we were done, there's absolutely nothing wrong with your cognitive function. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning is sound. You're sharp as ever. Will you write a letter saying that? I'll do better. I'll testify if needed. What they're claiming is absurd. It should have been reassuring. But I knew Amber had something else planned. She always did. Dylan and I spent the next 2 days investigating Dr. Foster's records more carefully. The medical notes Amber's lawyer had submitted painted a picture of serious cognitive decline. According to these notes, I'd forgotten appointments, repeated questions, shown confusion about basic tasks. There were descriptions of incidents I had no memory of because they'd never happened, but the notes were real. Typed into Dr. Foster's official system, dated and signed by him. Dr. Foster had been completely deceived by whoever impersonated me. We need to find out who that woman in the videos was, I said. Dylan nodded. I've been thinking about that. Someone who looks enough like you to pass on video. Someone who knew enough about your life to answer questions convincingly. Someone who had access to your personal information. Amber's mother, I said suddenly. Linda. She's about my age. Similar build. Blonde hair. Dylan pulled up photos from social media. Linda's Facebook page was semi-public. There she was. 58 years old, blonde, approximately my height and weight. In some photos, with the right lighting and angle, the resemblance was striking. Linda impersonated you at the notary, at the psychiatrist's office, at the ATM. With the right clothes, the right hairstyling, professional makeup, she could pass for you. At least well enough to fool people who don't know you personally. The realization settled over me like ice water. Amber's own mother had been the one pretending to be me. Creating a false medical history. Forging documents. Stealing my identity. Can we prove it? We need more evidence. But yes, I think we can. The competency hearing arrived faster than I wanted. Judge Margaret Thompson presided. She was a woman in her early 60s, with steel gray hair and a reputation for being fair but tough. She'd handled hundreds of guardianship cases. Amber's lawyer went first. His name was Richard Stone. Expensive suit, slicked back hair, the kind of attorney who made you feel dirty just being in the same room. He presented Dr. Foster's notes, statements from witnesses, bank records showing unusual spending. The bank records caught me off guard. Large cash withdrawals from my checking account. $5,000, $8,000, $12,000, all within the past 2 months. Your Honor, Stone said smoothly. These withdrawals show a pattern of poor financial judgment. Miss Winters has been removing large sums of cash with no clear purpose. This suggests either cognitive impairment or vulnerability to financial exploitation. I stared at the statements. Those weren't my withdrawals. I kept meticulous financial records. I balanced my checkbook monthly. Those transactions had never appeared on my statements. Dylan asked for a recess. We huddled in the hallway. Those withdrawals are real, he said, checking his phone after calling my bank. They're in the system. They came from your account. I didn't make them. I believe you. But someone did. Using your card, your PIN, or your account information. We went back into the courtroom. Stone called Brandon to testify. My son took the stand. He wouldn't look at me. His hands shook slightly as he was sworn in. Stone led him through a series of questions, designed to paint me as a woman in decline. When did you first notice changes in your mother's behavior? About a year ago. After my father died, she seemed lost. She'd forget things we'd talked about, repeat herself. She got lost driving to our house one time, called me crying because she couldn't remember the way. Lies. All lies. I'd never gotten lost, never called him crying, but he was so convincing, his voice breaking with emotion, his concern seeming so genuine. Did you try to help her? We suggested she see someone, a doctor who could evaluate her. We were worried about her living alone, managing her finances. But she refused. She said there was nothing wrong with her. More lies. They'd never suggested anything. They'd just started stealing from me. Why did your mother sign over the mountain house to you? She said it was too much for her to handle. The upkeep, the maintenance. She wanted us to have it. She said Dad would have wanted that. I couldn't stay quiet. That's not true. Judge Thompson looked at me. Miss Winters, you'll have your turn to testify, Stone continued. Did your mother seem to understand what she was signing? Brandon hesitated. Just for a moment, then said, at the time, yes. But now she claims she doesn't remember. That's what worries us. She makes decisions and then forgets she made them. When it was my turn to testify, I told the truth. All of it. The forgery. The impersonation. The fake medical records. Dylan presented Dr. Warner's evaluation. My passport proving I was in France when the deed was supposedly signed. But Stone had an answer for everything. Or, he said smoothly, is Miss Winters so confused that she doesn't remember the appointments, the documents? Dr. Foster is a licensed psychiatrist with an impeccable reputation. Are we supposed to believe he conducted therapy sessions with an imposter and never noticed? He conducted them over video, I said. He never saw me in person. Convenient that Miss Winters now claims someone who looks like her attended those sessions. Who would go to such elaborate lengths? And why? The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. Miss Winters is struggling with cognitive decline and doesn't remember events from her own life. During the lunch recess, Dylan got security footage from my bank. We watched it in his car on his laptop. The ATM withdrawals. The figure approaching the machine was wearing sunglasses and a hat, but the body type was right. The movements were practiced, confident. Dylan enhanced the image as much as he could. When the person turned slightly toward the camera, I saw it. That's not me. I know. But it looks enough like you that the bank never flagged it. It's Linda. It has to be. We need better proof. The hearing resumed. Stone presented more evidence. Neighbors who'd seen me acting strange. A grocery store clerk who said I'd seemed confused. Their testimony was vague but damaging. She asked me the same question twice. She seemed to forget where she parked her car. She looked lost. I barely knew these people. They were testifying about interactions so mundane they could have been anyone. But they were creating a narrative of confusion and decline. Helen testified on my behalf. She'd known me for 35 years, taught at the same high school, been my closest friend through everything. Joanne is as sharp as she's ever been, Helen said firmly. I spent 3 weeks traveling through France with her in March. She navigated train schedules, managed our budget, remembered every reservation. There's nothing wrong with her mind, but Stone dismissed her as biased. Of course, my best friend would defend me. Judge Thompson looked tired by the end of the day. I'm going to take this matter under advisement. I'll issue a ruling by the end of the week. In the meantime, status quo remains, which meant Brandon kept the power of attorney, kept control of my mountain house, and I had to wait. 3 days later, the ruling came. Judge Thompson granted temporary guardianship to Brandon for 90 days. Pending a full psychiatric evaluation by a court-appointed expert, my bank accounts were frozen. I couldn't make any major financial decisions. Couldn't sell property. Couldn't sign contracts. For the next 3 months, my own son controlled my life. Dylan tried to be optimistic. Temporary is better than permanent. We can fight this during the 90 days. We'll find more evidence. But I felt defeated, exhausted. I'd been fighting for weeks and losing ground every step. Amber had been planning this for months, building her case piece by piece while I'd been grieving my husband and trying to survive. I moved in with Helen. I couldn't afford to keep my Denver house without access to my bank accounts. Everything I'd worked for, everything Frank and I had built, was slipping away. That night, lying in Helen's guest room, I got a call from an unknown number. "Miss Winters? This is Grace Hartley. I'm a real estate agent in Aspen. I think we need to talk. I have information about Amber." Grace Hartley met us at a coffee shop in Aspen the next morning. She was a woman in her late 30s, practical looking, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and sharp, intelligent eyes. She shook my hand firmly. "I've been in Aspen real estate for 20 years, Grace said, stirring sugar into her coffee. "I know your house, Miss Winters. I've always admired it. Frank did beautiful work on that deck. You knew Frank?" "Not well, but we chatted at community events over the years. He loved that house. That's why when Amber contacted me about listing it, I was surprised." My hands tightened around my own coffee cup. "When did she contact you?" 2 months ago. She wanted to discuss putting it on the market. Said you were moving to assisted living and the family wanted to sell. She asked about pricing, about how fast I thought it would move. I told her the market was strong. A property like that, in that location, well-maintained, it would probably go for $1.2 million, maybe more. I'm not going to assisted living. I figured something was off when I pulled the property records and saw the deed transfer had only happened in March. And I remember seeing you at the Harvest Festival last year. You seemed perfectly healthy and sharp. So I did some digging. Grace pulled out a folder, spread documents across the table. I checked with the county recorder's office, got copies of all the filings. Then I did something probably not entirely ethical. I called Susan, the notary. We've worked together on closings before. I asked her about the transaction. What did she say? She said a woman came in who presented as you. Valid ID. Everything seemed legitimate. But Susan also said something interesting. She said the woman seemed nervous, kept looking at her phone like she was reading from a script. Susan didn't think much of it at the time. People are often nervous when signing over property. It was Amber's mother, I said. Linda. She impersonated me. Grace nodded slowly. I started thinking about that. So I did more research. Social media. Public records. I found photos of Linda. The resemblance is there. With the right preparation, right clothes, professional makeup, she could pass for you. At least to someone who doesn't know you well. Dylan leaned forward. Do you have proof of this? Not concrete proof. But I have circumstantial evidence. And I have something else. Grace pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos. I take lots of photos around town. Nature shots, mostly. I post them on my real estate Instagram. Look at this one. The photo showed the Aspen Town Center in March. Spring snow still on the peaks. And there, in the background, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, was Linda, coming out of a salon. Her hair freshly styled, colored blonde, cut in a style similar to mine. That's the day before the notary appointment, Grace said. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Just another tourist getting her hair done. But when I went back through my photos after talking to Susan, I found this. She showed us another photo. Linda going into a small store. The sign read Mountain Costumes and Theatrical Supply. This store rents and sells professional makeup. Prosthetics. The kind of things actors use. I called the owner, said I was asking about products for a client. He remembered Linda. Said she bought professional-grade makeup, foundation, contouring kits, some basic prosthetic pieces to change facial structure slightly. Paid cash. My heart was pounding. That's evidence. It's a start. I also found something else. Grace pulled out more papers. Amber has a listing appointment scheduled with a different agent. Not me. Someone named Clark Davidson. He's known for fast sales, cash buyers. The appointment is set for next month. She's really going to sell it, I whispered. As soon as possible, before anyone can stop her. Clark told me, when I called him pretending to be interested in properties in that area, that he has a buyer ready. Private buyer, cash deal. Quick close. Dylan was taking notes rapidly. This is huge. But we need more. We need something that directly ties Linda to the impersonation. Grace smiled. I thought you might say that. So I did something else that probably wasn't legal. I went through my archived text messages. I'm part of a local business owners group chat. And back in March, right around the time of the notary appointment, someone posted about seeing strange behavior at the title company. She showed us the text thread. A local shop owner had written, "Weird thing today. Saw a woman at Mountain Title who seemed to be getting coached by someone on a phone call. Kept stepping outside, coming back in, like she was rehearsing something. Probably nothing, but it struck me as odd." The timestamp was March 14th. The day before the notary appointment, I called this shop owner, asked if she remembered anything else. She said the woman was blonde, around 60, seemed nervous, and she remembers seeing the same woman later, getting into a car where two other people were waiting, a younger woman with dark hair and a man. Amber and Gary, I said. Grace nodded. Can't prove it. But the pieces fit. Dylan looked at all the evidence spread across the table. This is good. Really good. But we need something definitive. Something that proves beyond doubt that Linda impersonated Joanne. I might have that too, Grace said quietly. She pulled out one more document. I have a friend who works at the DMV. Completely off the record, she told me that 6 months ago, someone requested a replacement driver's license for Joanne Winters. Said the original was lost. The new license was mailed to an address in Denver that doesn't match Joanne's actual address. What address? Grace showed us. It was a Mailboxes Plus location. A private mailbox rental. I checked. That mailbox is rented under Linda's name. The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm. All of this evidence. All of this planning. Amber and her family had been working on this for months. Maybe longer. Dylan pulled out his phone, made a call. I need to bring in the FBI. This is interstate fraud, identity theft, financial exploitation of an elderly person. These are federal crimes. While Dylan talked on the phone, Grace leaned toward me. Miss Winters, I'm sorry this happened to you. Frank was a good man. He didn't deserve to have his legacy stolen like this. Why are you helping me? Because it's the right thing to do. And because I've seen too many older people in this community get taken advantage of by family members. It makes me sick. Dylan hung up. FBI is interested. They want to see all of this evidence. Grace, they're going to need you to make an official statement. I'm ready. Over the next week, things moved fast. The FBI opened an investigation. They subpoenaed records from the title company, from Dr. Foster's office, from my bank. They obtained surveillance footage. They interviewed Susan the notary, the shop owner, the DMV employee, and they found something else. Text messages. Somehow, they recovered deleted text messages between Amber, Linda, and Gary. Dylan brought me copies, printouts of the recovered texts. From Amber to Linda, March 10th. Mom, you did great at the dress rehearsal. One more time at the notary, and we're set. From Linda to Amber, March 14th. I hate this. It feels so wrong. From Amber to Linda. We don't have a choice. We're going to lose everything. Joanne has all this money just sitting there. She doesn't need it all. We do. From Gary, March 15th. Your mother's right, Amber. This is wrong. From Amber to Gary. It's already done. The appointment is tomorrow. We're doing this. From Linda to Amber, March 16th. I went through with it. The notary believed me. It's done. From Amber to Linda. Perfect. Now we just need to wait a few months, establish residency, then list it. By next fall, we'll have the money. They knew. All of them knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't confusion or misunderstanding. It was calculated fraud. But there was more. Brandon was in the text too. From Brandon to Amber, March 20th. I don't know if I can do this. She's my mother. From Amber to Brandon. Your mother will never even notice. She barely uses that house. We need this. Your father would have wanted you to have it. From Brandon to Amber, April 3rd. What if she figures it out? From Amber to Brandon. She won't. And if she does, we'll say she's confused. Forgetting things. We'll make everyone believe she's losing her mind. I've already been documenting things. From Brandon to Amber, April 10th. I feel sick about this. From Amber to Brandon. Then stop feeling and start acting. We're in this together. If you back out now, we're both screwed. And if you try to tell her, I have videos of you planting evidence in her house, you'll go to prison. Brandon was being blackmailed. By his own wife. He's a victim too, I said, staring at the messages. He's a co-conspirator, Dylan corrected gently. Yes, she manipulated him. Yes, she's controlling him through threats. But he made choices. He participated. He lied under oath. Can we use him? Can he testify against her? If he's willing, if he wants immunity. But Joanne, you need to prepare yourself. Even if he cooperates, your relationship with him is going to be complicated for a very long time. The FBI arranged for Brandon to wear a wire. They approached him at his office, showed him the evidence they'd gathered, explained the charges he was facing. Identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury. He could go to prison for years, unless he cooperated. Brandon agreed. He looked terrified in the FBI office, his hands shaking as they fitted the recording device under his shirt. I never meant for it to go this far, he kept saying. I just wanted to help. We were so desperate. You'll have a chance to make this right, the FBI agent said. Go home. Have a conversation with your wife. We need her to admit what she did. That night, in Brandon and Amber's townhouse, while FBI agents listened from a van outside, Brandon confronted his wife. Amber, we need to talk. Grace Hartley found the texts. She found everything. Mom knows. I heard this later, from the recording. Amber's voice was cold, controlled. So what? Your mother can't prove anything. She's incompetent, remember? That's what the judge said. The judge said temporary guardianship. And there's evidence now. Photos of your mother at the costume shop. Records of the fake ID. The FBI is involved. Silence. Then Amber laughed. It was a terrible sound. The FBI? For what? We didn't do anything illegal. You forged Mom's signature. Your mother impersonated her. That's fraud. Prove it. Your mother signed those documents. The notary verified it. A licensed psychiatrist documented her decline. The court agreed she needs a guardian. Everything is legal. But it's not true. Mom isn't confused. She's sharp. You made it all up, did I? Or does your mother just not remember? Memory is such a tricky thing. And she's been under so much stress. First, losing your father, now this conflict with us. It's enough to make anyone confused. Amber, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to tell the truth. No, you're not. Amber's voice went hard. Because if you do, I'll show everyone the videos. You planting evidence in your mother's house. You lying to Dr. Foster. You testifying in court. You're in this as deep as I am. Deeper, maybe, you're her son. The betrayal is worse coming from you. You made me do those things. Did I hold a gun to your head? You did them because you wanted the money too. You wanted to save our house. You wanted your mother's money. Don't pretend you're innocent. I just wanted us to be okay. I didn't want to hurt her. Well, you did. And now we're going to see this through. The house goes on the market next month. We'll have the money by Christmas. Your mother will be in a nice assisted living facility where she can't cause any more problems. Everything will be fine. What if I go to the police? Then I'll destroy you. I have evidence that you're the mastermind of this whole thing. That you coerced me and my parents into helping you steal from your own mother. I'll say I was afraid of you. That you threatened me. I have texts ready to show. Videos. I've been planning for this possibility all along. You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting us. There's a difference. Now stop being weak and remember what we're doing this for. For us. For our future. The FBI had everything they needed. A full confession. Admission of fraud. Proof of blackmail. 2 days later, they made their arrests. I wasn't there when it happened. Dylan called me at Helen's house, his voice tight with controlled excitement. They just arrested Amber, Linda, and Gary. FBI took them in an hour ago. Federal charges. Conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. My hands went numb. It's really happening. Yes. And Joanne, there's more. They're also charging Amber with coercion and blackmail based on the threats against Brandon. He's being offered a deal, full immunity, in exchange for his testimony. Is he taking it? Yes. He signed the agreement this morning. I should have felt relief. Victory. Instead, I felt hollow. My daughter-in-law was going to prison. My son, even though he'd escaped charges, had betrayed me in ways I'd never imagined possible. The mountain house was back under my name, the fraudulent deed voided by court order. But everything felt broken. That evening, Brandon came to Helen's house. Helen answered the door, looked at him with the kind of withering contempt only a retired English teacher can muster. But she let him in. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His eyes were red-rimmed. He couldn't seem to stand still, shifting from foot to foot in Helen's living room. Mom, I don't know what to say. I sat in the armchair Frank had given me for our 35th anniversary. Looked at this man who was my son but felt like a stranger. Then don't say anything. I need you to understand. I never wanted to hurt you. Amber kept pushing, saying we were going to lose everything. And I was scared. I've been unemployed for 8 months. We were going to lose our house. Her parents were living in their car for 2 weeks. I just wanted to help. So you stole from me. I thought you'd understand eventually. The mountain house. You only used it a few times a year. I thought maybe you'd decide to let us have it anyway, and then we'd just be ahead of the conversation. You didn't ask me. You forged my signature. You helped create fake medical records. You testified in court that I was mentally incompetent. Amber said it was the only way. Amber manipulated you. But Brandon, you're a grown man. You made choices. You could have said no at any point. You could have come to me and asked for help. I would have loaned you money. I would have helped you find a job. I would have done anything except let you steal from me. He was crying now, standing in the middle of Helen's living room, tears streaming down his face. Dad would hate me. Yes, I said quietly. He would. I've filed for divorce. I'm moving out. I'm trying to make things right. You can't make this right. You can testify. You can help send Amber to prison. But you can't undo what you did to me. Are you saying you'll never forgive me? I looked at my son, at this person I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. The little boy who used to help Frank build that deck, handing him nails and boards. The teenager who'd written me Mother's Day cards, promising to always take care of me. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I don't know if I can. Maybe someday. But Brandon, you're going to have to live with what you did. And so am I. He left. Helen brought me tea and sat with me while I cried. Not for the house, not for the money, but for the relationship with my son that might never be repaired. The trial came faster than I expected. Federal prosecutors moved quickly. They had overwhelming evidence. The text messages, the videos, Brandon's testimony, Grace's documentation, bank records showing Linda had withdrawn cash using my stolen identity. Everything. Amber's lawyer tried to argue that she'd believed the power of attorney was legitimate, that she'd been trying to help her struggling family, that she'd never intended to harm me. But the jury saw through it, saw the calculation in those text messages, saw how she'd manipulated Brandon, her own mother, everyone around her, saw how she'd planned every step. The verdict came back guilty on all counts. Sentencing happened 3 weeks later. Judge Thompson presided over that too. She looked at Amber with something like disgust. "Miss Winters," the judge said, "what you did represents one of the most callous frauds I've seen in my 20 years on the bench. You didn't just steal money. You tried to steal an elderly woman's autonomy, her dignity, her home. You created false medical records. You manipulated your own family into participating in a criminal enterprise. The fact that you showed no remorse throughout this process tells me everything I need to know about your character." Amber got 15 years, federal prison. She'd serve at least 12 before being eligible for parole. Linda and Gary, who'd cooperated once arrested, received lighter sentences, 3 years each. The judge acknowledged they'd been manipulated by Amber, but held them accountable for their choices. "You're both old enough to know right from wrong," Judge Thompson told them. "You chose wrong." The civil matters resolved quickly after that. Judge Thompson vacated the guardianship, voided the power of attorney, declared the deed transfer fraudulent and restored my ownership, unfroze my bank accounts, ordered restitution for my legal fees and costs. I stood in the courtroom when it was all finalized, Dylan beside me, Helen in the gallery behind me, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not quite peace, but something close. "It's over," Dylan said quietly. "Yes," I agreed. "It's over." Getting back to the mountain house took longer than I expected. There were legal formalities, documents to be filed, locks to be changed. The house had to be cleared of all of Amber's belongings. The county had to update their records. It was 6 weeks before Dylan called and said, "It's done. The house is legally yours again. You can go home." Home. The word felt strange. The house had always been my refuge, but now it was also the site of a betrayal so deep I wasn't sure I could ever think of it the same way. Helen offered to come with me. "You shouldn't go alone the first time. Not after everything. But I needed to do this myself. Needed to walk into that house and reclaim it. Make it mine again." I drove up to Aspen on a cold November morning. The aspens were bare, their white trunks stark against the mountain backdrop. Snow dusted the peaks. The air had that crystalline quality it gets in late autumn, sharp and clean. The house looked the same from outside. Log and stone, large windows facing the mountains, the deck Frank built extending from the back. I'd had the locks changed, and the new keys felt strange in my hand. I unlocked the door, stepped inside. Someone had cleaned. Grace, probably, with her characteristic thoughtfulness. The floors were swept. The furniture had been put back the way I'd arranged it. The leather couch sat in its proper place by the fireplace. I walked through the room slowly. Everything looked the same, but everything felt different. In the master bedroom, I saw the bed where Amber had slept. In the kitchen, the counter where she'd stood while screaming at me to get out. In the living room, the spot where Brandon had refused to meet my eyes. I sat down on the deck, in the chair Frank had built by hand, and looked at the mountains. This was supposed to feel like victory. I'd won. The house was mine. The criminals were in prison. Justice had been served. So why did I feel so empty? My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. He'd been sending them regularly, though I rarely responded. "Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know I got a job. Software company in Boulder. I'm starting next week. I'm going to pay you back. For the legal fees, for everything. Even if it takes me the rest of my life." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, "I'm glad you have a job." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Over the next few months, I settled back into the mountain house, spent weekends there, started volunteering with an elder advocacy group in Denver, helping other seniors avoid financial fraud. I told my story at community centers, at senior living facilities, at legal aid clinics. I was lucky, I told audiences. I had resources. I had a good lawyer. I had friends who believed me. Not everyone does. And that's why we need to watch out for each other. People approached me after these talks, told me their own stories. A man whose daughter had stolen his life savings. A woman whose son had taken out credit cards in her name. An elderly couple whose caregiver had forged their signatures on checks. The stories were heartbreaking. And common. More common than anyone wanted to admit. Helen visited often. She'd retired the same year I had, and we'd been planning to travel more together. Those plans had been derailed by everything with Amber. But slowly, we started making new plans. Italy in the spring? Helen suggested one evening, sitting on the deck with glasses of wine. Maybe, I said. I think I'd like that. Brandon and I spoke occasionally. Brief conversations. Polite. Distant. He'd moved to a small apartment in Boulder. Started therapy. Was trying, he said, to understand how he'd let things get so far. My therapist says I have problems with boundaries, he told me during one phone call. That I let Amber control me because I was afraid of conflict. That's probably true, I agreed. Do you think we'll ever be okay? You and me? I watched the sunset paint the mountains pink and orange. I don't know, Brandon. I love you. You're my son. But I don't trust you. And I don't know if I ever will again. That's fair, he said quietly. That's more than fair. We hung up. I sat on the deck until the stars came out, brilliant and cold in the thin mountain air. 6 months after the trial, I got a letter. From Amber. Forwarded through Dylan, since she wasn't allowed to contact me directly. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was short, handwritten. No apology, just explanation. I grew up with nothing. My parents lost their house when I was 17. We lived in a motel for 6 months. I swore I'd never be that poor again. When I married Brandon, I thought I was marrying security. But he lost his job. We were sinking. And you had so much. That house, just sitting there. It seemed so wasteful. I convinced myself it wasn't really stealing. That you owed us something. That Brandon deserved his inheritance. I was wrong, but I still don't regret fighting for my family. I read the letter twice, then burned it in the fireplace, watched the pages curl and blacken, and turn to ash. She was right about one thing. She'd fought for her family. She just hadn't cared who she destroyed in the process. Spring came to the mountains. The aspens leafed out, brilliant green against blue sky. Wildflowers carpeted the meadows. The snow melted from the peaks, feeding streams that rushed and tumbled over rocks. I spent more time at the house now. Felt it becoming mine again, slowly. The memories of Amber and that terrible night were fading, replaced by older, better memories. Frank and me. Brandon, as a child. All the good years before everything fell apart. One Saturday morning, I was sitting on the deck with coffee when Grace drove up. She'd become a friend over the past months. Stopped by occasionally to check on me, bring me fresh baked goods from her favorite bakery in town. I brought cinnamon rolls, she called, climbing out of her car. Still warm. We sat on the deck together, eating rolls and watching hummingbirds dart between the feeders. How are you really doing? Grace asked. Better, I said. And it was true. Some days are harder than others. But I'm finding my way back. Have you thought about what I suggested? About writing a book? Grace had been pushing me to write about my experience. Said other people needed to hear the story. Learn from it. I've been thinking about it, I admitted. Started making notes. Not sure I'm ready yet. When you are, Grace said. I know a publisher in Denver. She specializes in true crime and legal memoirs. She'd be interested. After Grace left, I sat down at the table Frank had built for the deck and opened my laptop. Started typing. I went to my mountain house in Colorado to rest and found my daughter-in-law's family living there. The words flowed easier than I expected. The whole story. The shock of that first night. The forgery. The fake medical records. The trial. The aftermath. I wrote for hours, until the sun moved across the sky and the mountain shadows grew long. Until my coffee went cold and my back ached from sitting. When I finally stopped, I had 20 pages. Not a book yet, but a beginning. Over the next months, I kept writing. filled in details, added context, explained how the fraud worked, how to spot warning signs, what to do if it happens to you, turned my pain into something useful, something that might help someone else. Brandon and I found a new rhythm. We met for lunch once a month. Neutral territory. A diner halfway between Denver and Boulder. We didn't talk about the past much. Instead, we talked about his job, about my advocacy work, about the book I was writing. "Will I be in it?" he asked one day. "Yes," I said. "I can't tell the story without you." "Will you make me look terrible?" "I'll tell the truth. The truth is complicated. You were manipulated, but you also made choices. Both things are true." He nodded, pushed his food around his plate. "I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately, what he'd think of me." "He'd be disappointed," I said honestly. "But he'd also want you to learn from this. To be better." "I'm trying." "I know. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. But it was acknowledgement. Recognition that people are complicated. That mistakes can be massive and still not be the end of the story." Helen and I did go to Italy that spring. Spent 2 weeks wandering through Florence and Rome and the Tuscan countryside. Ate too much pasta, drank too much wine, laughed until our stomachs hurt. "You seem lighter," Helen observed one evening, sitting at a cafe in Siena. "I feel lighter," I agreed, "like I'm finally putting it down. All of it, the anger, the hurt. I'm not carrying it anymore." "That's good. You deserve peace." "We both do." The book published the following year. A small press, modest print run. But it found its audience. Other elder fraud survivors, adult children worried about their aging parents, legal advocates, social workers. I did readings at bookstores and community centers, spoke on panels about financial exploitation, was interviewed on local news programs. The story resonated because it was real, because it could happen to anyone. People asked me all the time, "How did you survive? How did you come back from something like that?" And I told them the truth. I had help. I had a good lawyer. I had a best friend who never doubted me. I had strangers like Grace who chose to do the right thing. I had my own stubbornness, and I had the memory of my husband, reminding me that I deserved to fight for what was mine. 2 years after the trial, I was at the mountain house for the weekend when Brandon called. "Mom, I'm getting married." My first instinct was fear. Not again. Not another Amber. But Brandon heard it in my silence. "Her name is Samantha. She's a teacher, 3rd grade. She's kind and honest and nothing like Amber. And she knows everything. About what I did. About the trial. She knows who I was. And who I'm trying to be. Does she want to meet me? Very much. If you're willing." I met Samantha the following week. At that same diner, neutral territory. She was 34, with warm brown eyes and an easy smile. A teacher, like I'd been. We talked about education, about students, about the joy and frustration of the classroom. She didn't mention the trial. Didn't mention Amber. Just treated me like Brandon's mother. Like someone she wanted to know. As we were leaving, she touched my arm gently. "Thank you for giving him another chance. I know you didn't have to." "I'm still figuring out what chance I'm giving," I said honestly. "That's okay. He understands. We both do." They married quietly 6 months later. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. Brandon asked if I'd come. I almost said no, but Helen convinced me. "You don't have to forgive everything, but you can witness him trying to be better. That's not nothing." So I went. Stood in the back of the small chapel. Watched my son promise to love and honor someone. Watched him cry when he said his vows. Saw something in his face that looked like the boy he used to be before everything went wrong. After the ceremony, he hugged me. "Thank you for being here." "I'm still angry," I told him. Some days more than others. "I know. I'll always be sorry. For everything. I know that too." It wasn't a Hollywood ending. Wasn't complete reconciliation. But it was real. It was honest. It was two people trying to find their way back to each other across a canyon of betrayal and hurt. The mountain house became mine again in the truest sense. Not just legally, but emotionally. I reclaimed every room, every memory, replaced the bad with good. Had friends visit. Hosted Thanksgiving there. Watched Brandon and Samantha walk the same trails Frank and I had walked. On what would have been Frank's 70th birthday, I sat on the deck with a glass of his favorite whiskey and talked to him like he was still there. I did it. I told the mountains, told his memory. I fought back. I got our house back. I'm okay now, mostly. Some days I'm really okay. The wind moved through the aspens, making their leaves shimmer and dance. I chose to believe it was Frank, telling me he was proud. The advocacy work continued. I helped pass legislation in Colorado strengthening penalties for financial exploitation of the elderly, worked with banks to implement better safeguards, trained law enforcement on how to recognize elder fraud. Every time I helped someone, every time I prevented a fraud or caught one in progress, I thought about that night when Amber told me to get out of my own house. When I sat down on my couch and said, "Go ahead, call them if you dare," I'd meant it as defiance, as refusal to be pushed out. I hadn't known then that it would become the defining moment of my second act. The moment I chose to fight. Looking back now, 5 years later, I understand what I learned. That family doesn't mean accepting abuse. That love doesn't mean letting people steal from you. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is sit down, refuse to move, and watch the truth emerge. I learned that justice is possible but not guaranteed. That fighting for yourself is exhausting and necessary. That healing takes years, not months. That forgiveness is complicated and optional. That you can love someone and still hold them accountable. Most importantly, I learned that I was stronger than I thought. That at 67, betrayed and broken, I could still stand up and fight back. That I could reclaim not just my house but my life. The mountain house is mine. Truly. Completely mine. And I'm here. Still standing, still fighting, still believing that truth matters and justice is possible. Some days, I sit on the deck Frank built and think about Amber in her prison cell. I don't feel triumphant about it. I feel sad. Sad that greed and desperation drove her to destroy so many lives. Sad that she couldn't see another way. But mostly, I feel grateful. Grateful for Grace and Dylan and Helen. Grateful for the legal system that, despite its flaws, ultimately worked. Grateful for the advocacy community that welcomed me. Grateful for the readers who found my book and told me it helped them. And yes, grateful even for Brandon's halting attempts at redemption. He's not the son I raised, but he's trying to become the man his father would have wanted him to be. That has to count for something. I'm 72 now. The mountain house is still mine. I spend summers here watching the mountains change with the light. I've written 2 more books. I've helped dozens of families avoid or escape financial fraud. I've lived. That night, when I sat down on my couch and refused to leave, I didn't know I was choosing my future. I didn't know I was becoming someone new, someone who fights, someone who refuses to be a victim. I just knew I wasn't leaving. This was my house, my life, my story, and nobody, not even my own son, was going to take that from me. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who tried to take advantage of you? How did you find the strength to fight back? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's facing a similar situation right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about real people overcoming impossible situations. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's being pushed out of their own life and needs to know they can push back. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that you're stronger than you think, that your home, your dignity, and your autonomy are worth fighting for. That justice is possible, even when everything seems lost. Take care of yourselves. Protect each other. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is sit down, refuse to move, and let the truth speak for itself.